Sahil, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thank you for having me. I mean, this is a long time coming. We've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm glad to finally be able to do it in person.
It's almost close to 2 years of DMs, I think, back and forth.
Really?
We were pushing, we were getting in there.
Who slid into whose DMs originally?
Probably both of us DMing you. And I think I was saying to you too, in all seriousness, I actually don't think our account would have existed without your influence, because we have a mutual friend, Barrett, played baseball with us at Babson. You grew up with him. Shout out Barrett. Amazing dude. I'm going to kick his ass on the podcast next week when he comes on. But he was showing us a lot of the early Twitter content that you were putting out. I'd never seen this concept of a thread, of telling a story super eloquently, very succinctly. And Harry and I, when we decided that we wanted to put more new content out around the nutrition space, we said, can we maybe take Sahil's style and apply it to nutrition and a lot of the food stories are in the food system? And so we started doing that, and the post started going really viral, which led to the podcast, which led to Noble, which led to everything that we're doing now. So we appreciate you, brother.
It's so cool. I have this thing I've been musing on recently around this idea that the goal of life is to create ripples, and those ripples can either be positive or negative. Mm-hmm. And so obviously the goal, at least in my mind, is to create positive ripples that extend beyond yourself. And that can be tiny ripples, like little things that you do in the world. Or it can be things like this, where like you put in a tiny stone and then other people are like taking it and running with it, creates an extension and like an amplification of your own ripples out into the world that extends well beyond yourself. So it's so cool to me to actually like see examples of that in the real world.
And that phenomenon is so abstract, I feel like, for a lot of people, if you're not really in this digital creator space where people can be observing you without you even really knowing it, which is kind of weird. But it's also awesome, because if you're putting good stuff out there, it's like trying to achieve excellence in whatever you're doing, you could be inspiring someone with no real effort or real intention behind it. So it's super cool to see.
Yeah, it's also just like we all, especially people that have some degree of expertise in whatever it is they're doing, have this impression that everyone has the knowledge that we have. There's like this, it's like a cognitive bias. You assume that everyone else knows this baseline level of knowledge that you have about whatever it is. And as a result, a lot of people don't share that knowledge because they assume like, dude, this is obvious. I'm not going to share this. Like, this is a stupid thing that everyone knows this. The reality is that 99% of that stuff, there's somebody out there that will benefit from it. Definitely. And so my whole thing has always been just like default to sharing it. And if people tell you it sucks and they're like, dude, no one gets value from this, you'll hear it and you'll know. And then you can maybe like step on the brakes a little bit. But the reality, always what I've found is even the most basic things, if you have a way of saying it or a way of distilling it or a way of sharing the idea that's a little bit different, slightly better than what's existed, it impacts someone somewhere. And it makes them change course, like in some tiny way. And if you can create, like if you can be a person that creates those tiny little inflection points for other people in the world, in my mind, I'm like, what more could I ask for from my own life than to be able to do that? And that's not a financial goal. That's not something where you're like, well, I'm going to make this much money because this person did this. Like, I'm not tied to you guys having this trajectory in any way other than that it makes me extraordinarily happy and proud to see other people having taken the ball and being able to go and run with it in their own life and make the changes that like I see in all of you guys now. That's so cool to me.
It is so cool. And I think you just hit on like this desire to create ripples. I think for me, that's been my biggest piece of advice to help myself overcome imposter syndrome, especially in the beginning, telling myself, look, you have this information. Some people might know it, but 99% of the world doesn't. So you actually have an obligation to share this because maybe it'll help a few people get healthier. Like I remember writing a thread a year ago about seed oils. And obviously on X, it's such a tried and talked about topic at this point, but there were still a ton of people that were like, wow, this is super helpful. This is super beneficial. You have a couple dickheads that are like, oh, dude, I didn't know anything about seed oils. I'm like, well, I'm not writing it for you. I'm writing it for the 45-year-old mom that's trying to make changes for her kids and doesn't know what right oil to buy.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking to a guy who like creates basically like broadly self-improvement related content. So there's always someone that gets pissed about whatever you say. Like if you talk about motivation, you talk about improving your life, you talk about learning, you talk about growth, there's always some dickhead that is like, going to hate on that, right? Yeah. They don't want the self-improvement content. They're cynical or they don't want it, right? They feel like they're in a great place in life and they're kind of like, screw you. I don't want to hear this. You're pissing me off. Usually I would say they're not in a good place in life and they're like, living in their mom's basement, if you will. But the reality is that some people aren't going to like it, but a lot of people do, right? Like I don't need to read Atomic Habits. I know all about what it means to build great habits and to break bad ones. I've been doing that my whole life. I don't need to read the book. But I can appreciate that there are millions of people that have benefited dramatically from reading that book and having like made tiny changes in their life that have created an impact. And so I don't need to be cynical about it because I see it, like you see it in the world, that even the most basic thing that you say about motivation or about doing a tiny thing once a day that can create a compounded impact, like saying that, if one person then makes that change in their life, that's great. And if 10 people hate it and 10 people are like, you're an idiot, I hate you, that's fine, because one person, it literally created a change in their life that, I mean, like, it's not being grandiose to say that it can actually change the course of their life. One little thing.
Definitely.
You can like point to moments in your life where some tiny little change in mindset or some little learning or something someone said to you impacted the course of your entire life. And so if you can be that for someone else out in the world, it's like, again, I say, like, what more could you really want in terms of what you're doing?
Yeah, we host a men's group at our house every Monday, and we're going through this book, and one of the chapters is legitimately just about the power of the tongue and how words just carry this weight that people really don't truly appreciate. Just the power of a compliment, like saying something positive about somebody else is such low hanging fruit, but it could be such a game changer for people. And I just like, I think about that all the time, just in terms of like a few simple words can change the course of someone's day, week, month, and that could be a year.
This is like, by the way, also that I love that phrase, the power of the tongue. I've never thought of that, but this is also like maybe my number one piece of marriage advice, relationship advice that I have is tell your partner one thing you appreciate about them every single day. And ideally, it's not the same thing every single day, but tell them, vocalize one thing every single day that you love about them, that you appreciate about them, that you have gratitude for. Because them hearing it is one of the most powerful things that you can do for your relationship long term. Because what happens is we default to just not saying those things. Our natural bias is we just coast through life. Yeah, there's some little thing that they did, but I'm just not going to say it because I just expect it, or it's natural, or they've always been doing it. And when you don't hear the thing, you forget that the other person does appreciate it. And you can get caught in this like stasis and this, stagnant relationship. And so just saying that one thing can like dramatically change how much appreciation the other person feels in a relationship, which I can attest to the fact that it truly like fundamentally changes the way that you guys interact long term.
Totally.
So that's something you're trying to do every single day with your wife.
My wife and I do that every single day. And it can be the stupidest thing, right? Like the other day, like like on a sink, there's like sometimes like a built-in soap dispenser like in the thing. And I love when that is full. I don't know why, but like there's something about the feeling of like you pump it and like the soap, like doing dishes after dinner. I always clean up while my wife is getting our son cleaned up and ready for bed. And there's just something about that. I don't know what it is. It's like one of those like Reddit things on like oddly satisfying or whatever. Like there's just something about it that I love. And unsolicited, my wife had like filled it up one day when it was running low. And I said to her, I was like, I really appreciated that you did that because that I like that. It's one of my quirky things. And she heard it and it was like a laughing moment. We're kind of like joking about it. But that, when you think about it, like over and over and over again for 365 days, when you told the person for an entire year one little thing that they did that you really loved about them, it creates a dramatic impact.
Yeah,
totally.
That act shows you that she appreciates you, and then you're returning the favor by complimenting her, which makes her then feel amazing. It's like this amazing cyclical thing.
Yeah. And the flip side of it, when you don't do that, is you create this environment of like tiny acts of disrespect for the other person that are like the death by 1,000 cuts. There was this article in The Atlantic where I think the title of the article was, I got divorced because I wouldn't put my bowl in the sink, something like that. And basically it was that his wife really always wanted him to put his like bowl from breakfast or whatever it was in the sink. And he would leave it on the kitchen counter rather than putting it in the sink. And his point in his mind was, that's such a stupid thing. Like it's there, it's clean, it's fine, it's close to the sink. Like, why do I need to do that? It's so easy. And I'm doing all of these other big things in our life. I'm working, I'm doing all of the, providing, I'm doing all these other things. But for her, it was like this tiny thing that he just couldn't do. It was like a tiny act of disrespect for her, of contempt, that he couldn't just put it into the sink when he was already there. And it created this like cut after cut after cut after cut until they broke. And so I often think like, from an inversion mindset of I can't tell you how to have a successful marriage, but I can tell you how to have a miserable one.
Yeah.
And we should avoid those things.
Yeah.
And that's like often an easier way to get to a great outcome. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to live a successful life, but I really know how to live a miserable life.
Yes.
And so let me avoid all those things.
Yeah. It's actually a great framework. And I used it when I was leaving my corporate job. I was like, what do you not want to be doing?
Yeah.
Like that, start with that. Because most people struggle with like the question, what's your grand mission? What do you want to be doing? It's impossible to answer until you start. So figure out what are the things you just absolutely won't do, and then move away from that as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I think it's really hard in general to come up with like, what is your purpose? What is your mission? Just
yeah.
like sit back and be like, well, what is it? Because you don't know. Like there's this quote that I love from Rumi, the ancient poet.
Yeah.
And he basically says, when you start to walk on the way appears.
Mhm.
When you start to walk on the way appears. And I love that so much because it applies directly to this idea of purpose, where you can't just sit here in your chair and be like, there's my purpose.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. I know what it looks like. You have to start walking on the way, and then the way appears. And the way, like walking on the way, means actually creating movement. It means doing the things on a daily basis to create the movement that then the way starts to appear. Then you start to see, oh, that's my vision. That's my purpose. I didn't have any idea what my purpose was when I was leaving my prior job. I just knew I had to get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I knew I needed to start doing something to make sure I could provide for my family and make money. And I hoped that it was something that I actually enjoyed doing and I could create. And I was like, oh, I can write, I can make some money, and I can do this, I can start this business. But I was creating movement, and then the way started to appear. And then I started to see there was this bigger picture. There was something to this. There was vision, there was mission. But that only came when I actually started walking the way.
Yeah, it's
So
interesting.
good.
I saw on your Instagram story yesterday that you got lunch with Jason Karp. We love Jason. He's been on the podcast before, one of the most brilliant guys we've ever met. And in some ways, kind of similar, where you both recognized that
Very.
finance wasn't the thing and you took drastic action to get out of that. But I know you also mentioned that you were talking about this concept of ripple effects with him. And I was like, damn, I would give anything to be a fly on the wall for this lunch between you two guys. So what kind of stuff did you guys talk about? Any new breakthroughs?
Yeah,
with
I
him?
mean, he is a new friend that feels like an old friend. I only met him at Brian Mazza's HPLT event in
Really?
Austin for the first time. And, you know, this is funny. Like, you talk about sliding into my DMs. Like, I slid into Jason's DMs before that event because I saw that he was going to be there. He was someone I'd admired for a long time. I know about his career, and I know about his transitions that were similar to mine, right? He had tremendous success in finance, way more than I did, by the way. But tremendous success in finance, and basically, like, at the peak of his net worth was also the peak of his misery in life. And I know that feeling. You know, I kind of stepped off the treadmill before I was going to get to that point, but I know that, like, I know what that looks like. And so I reached out to him to see if we could spend some time together there. And Brian was kind enough to sit the three of us all together at a table at the dinner. And so we got to know each other, and he was coming into New York. And so we decided to spend a few hours. We're going to work on some cool stuff together. I can't exactly say what it is yet, but we're just so like energy aligned, if there's a better way to put it, that there will be some really cool things that come from it. I'm a big believer just broadly. And like, again, I don't know. I can't sit back and like plan out what the 10 different things are that are going to happen or have an exact idea of what it is. But I know that if I spend time around big thinking people, and if I can somehow create value in that room, that incredible things will come, both in terms of my energy and interest, and also in terms of my financial results and the things that I can actually go out and build and create. And so my like prime directive at this stage of my life is I want to spend time with incredible people, and people that are positive sum, and people that are good people and kind people. I don't want to spend time with assholes. That's the anti-goal around all of this. But I know if I can get into that room, if I can be around people like that and somehow have them want to have me around, that great things will come from it.
Yeah.
How do you convey that faith in just like being in the right room and not necessarily having a plan, but just being like, I know this is where I'm supposed to be, to people who are maybe a little bit more small-minded thinking, where they're like, I need to know every detail until I get to this result?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest way I would think about this is people are going to think you are crazy for living the way that you want to live. And that might be, they're going to think you're crazy for training like a maniac. That might be, they're going to think you're crazy for eating the way that you want to eat, for not partying, for working like a dog on things that you really care about. Normal people are going to think you are crazy for doing those things. Most people will allow that to continue to exist in their world. They'll allow those people that are telling them they're crazy to continue to just putter around and be there. My goal was to get rid of that. And I was perfectly happy if that meant being alone for a period of time, in order to eventually find the people that loved the crazy side of me, to get around people that see that craziness in you. And that's actually what they love about you, because they are crazy in their own ways.
Right.
So like when I see you guys and you're pursuing this like weird vision, objectively, like a weird vision around different things that's very different from how normal people would want to live or pursue things, I think that's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Like I see that and I'm like, wow, that's great. These guys didn't care that it was different, that they were pursuing things a different way. They stepped off the corporate track. They weren't doing the safe thing. Like I can now see that I can be that person that like supports the crazy people that are out there doing those weird things. But you guys can attest to this. Like when you live life a different way that isn't normal, people literally think you're crazy. And that's your family, that's your old friends, that's literally anyone that's around you. And you need to find the people that love that crazy side.
Yeah. There's something powerful in that, where it's like the real you is kind of the weird you. And that's, I think most people will find that alignment for business and life when they start to embrace the weirdness in themselves, are just like, hey, let me just double down on this random Reddit obsession that I have, or something that makes you unique and different. Like that's where your alpha is in life.
Yeah. And I spent most of my life terribly afraid of that weirdness in myself. And I masked it with a whole lot of bullshit that wasn't true to who I am as a person. I mean, I think back to high school and being deeply insecure about who I was, whether founded or unfounded, I was, and masking that insecurity with like bravado and lies and being a bully, being a jock, and like putting on this whole persona, because that's what I thought would like cover up the fact that I was actually just like a chubby, insecure 16-year-old kid, whatever age that was. And that didn't go away for many years for me because I hadn't found my identity. Like at the end of the day, we all think we're looking to make money or to achieve wealth or to achieve fame or success. But the reality is what we're looking to achieve is identity. We want to find who we are and find where we fit in the world. And until you find that, and until you're comfortable with your true identity, you're just living someone else's life. Like you're just on a quest. You're just masking things. You're just not living to your true self. And a big part of that is because you're surrounded by people who don't embrace you for who you truly are. And for that weirdness, for loving that Reddit thread, for, you know, being willing to go head down on like an organ meat company, whatever the thing is, they tell you that doesn't make sense, or they tell you to be realistic, or they tell you to keep your corporate job, or whatever that is. And so my whole perspective that has shifted over the last few years is like, find the places where those crazy people are and where you can have a community of other crazy people like that. I mean, Austin, Texas, by the way, is like one of those places where there's just a bunch of crazy, weird people doing weird things that are so freaking kind and positive to one another. And I like, that is why I seek out communities like HPLT, like Brian's thing, like the running community, is because I just find that there is like a big embrace of weirdness there.
Yeah. The embrace of weirdness makes you feel normal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of, I remember when I was when I was in consulting, we had just started Mafia. We were writing threads, seeing success, thinking about Noble. I remember just being almost afraid to tell people that I worked with or my friends from back home that were in corporate jobs what I was doing, just because of the reaction that they would get. And then I basically put my head down for 2 years. And then I saw a lot of those same people after that 2-year span. It's pretty recent. And I just felt so comfortable with the direction that I was at, whether it was, you know, the skill set that I developed, living fully in line with our mission, the skill set, everything. I was so confident in that decision. And I'm curious for you, what was the reaction like with your boss or the office when you told them you were resigning from this ridiculous private equity job to go chase something obscure on Twitter? And have you gone back and seen any of those people that maybe reaffirm the decision that you made too?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was crazy, right? Like, I was very much like on the track. That's not to say I was going to be the most successful private equity person of all time. I probably wouldn't have been, because I just didn't care enough about it, but I would have made lots of money and done well. So when I left, originally I was planning to leave and go join another investment firm of some sort. And that didn't work out for a variety of reasons. And so then I was leaving to like pursue whatever this thing was, which it wasn't really a thing. There wasn't really anything to it. And I think they were just confused. No one knew that I was making money off of it. There was no clear business plan. I mean, there wasn't anything to it. It was just weird. It was just like a weird thing that I was going off and doing. So, excuse me. I think there was just like a general confusion and basically a like, I would guess what they thought was like, oh, he burned out. Yeah. You know, he needs a break. It's like, you go get your MBA typically. If you like work in private equity, you get burned out, you go do 2-year MBA and then you come back and you're fine. You're refreshed. You partied for 2 years. But that's not what it was. In my mind, that's not what it was. I still have like my core group of like 4 or 5 friends from the firm that are like my boys. Like I was in the trenches with them. They were younger and they've been super supportive. And to be honest, the partner, like it's an amazing group of people. Like the partner group was super supportive. They all invested when I raised my little venture fund. Like they've been incredibly, incredibly supportive. But I do think they thought it was like very, very weird. But I was fortunate. It was a great, great group of people at the end of the day, like separate and apart from all the work and whether it was a fit for me or not, they were a great group of people.
Yeah. But the most important person believed in you, which was your wife, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't she the one that was like, I think you could do this.
Yeah.
There's a way to turn this into a business.
Yeah. I have no business being with my wife. Like, you know, I do not deserve the type of person that she is in life. I mean, to the point I'm being crazy, I met my wife when I was 16 years old. I started dating her. I was 16. She was 15 when we started dating. We dated through high school. We dated through college, long distance for 7 years in that. And we got married in 2016, 7 years ago. And that seems really weird in this day and age. That might not have been weird in like 1950. People married the high school sweetheart. Like that was a normal thing. Now, when I tell that to people, like normal people, they're like, what? You didn't want to party? You didn't want to, meet other girls? You didn't want to do this? You didn't want to do that? And I think it's funny that like that is weird. I love my wife. Like I want to spend the rest of my life with her. And it's a weird thing to some people that I wanted to do that. Like that, like, what is wrong with society in some way? Like that's the weird thing that I didn't want to go like off on some like set of conquests and travel the world and, do the things that young guys are supposed to do. To me, it's a weird thought that you can just go do all of that and then just turn it off and are expected to like be monogamous and just have one, partner for the rest of your life. Like that is weird to me. I actually don't know how that can possibly work psychologically, that you can like have it all and then all of a sudden be like, nope, now it's just this one thing for the rest of my life. Like it actually just like defies logic to me that you might be able to do that. But I am just like, I'm extremely fortunate to have someone in my life who honestly believes in me more than I believe in myself a lot of the time. I always say that like, if you have one person in your life that believes in you as much or more as you believe in yourself, you are extremely lucky. If you have 2, you're like, astronaut. It's like you've won the lottery. And I feel like I probably have 3. Like I think my parents are like that. And I was extremely, extremely lucky. My dad certainly has believed in me more than I believed in myself at many times in my life. But my wife, I mean, like when I was going to run my marathon, I trained for 6 months. I just started running. I trained for 6 months. I was trying to run a sub 3-hour marathon and I was leaving to go fly to Pennsylvania to go run it. And I asked her, like, do you think I'm going to do it? Do you think I'm going to hit my time? And she said 100%. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, I thought there was maybe like an 80% chance. And she was like, no, you're the type of person that when you say you're going to do something, you go do it. And she really believed that. Like she would have been shocked if I had called her and said, it didn't happen. Didn't make it. And like, what an amazing thing to have someone in your life that truly believes in you more than you believe in yourself. Like how empowering is that to be lifted up on the shoulders like that of someone else? And if it's your partner, even better. So I constantly marvel at how lucky I've been in that.
How have you guys been able to grow together? Because I know that's one of those things where if you have an early relationship, it can be tough.
Yeah. And I think I think there's a lot of luck involved. Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest things is like your relationship changes fundamentally across different seasons of your life. And people that have the expectation that it's going to be the same are destined to fail. Like if you think that that honeymoon phase of falling in love is going to be there for the entirety of your life, it's never going to work. It's just not, because most of life is sitting around doing nothing. It's just the reality. Like you expect that life is these Instagram pictures and life is like the honeymoon and the vacation and the beautiful wedding and all of the like gorgeous moments. The reality is that 99% of life is sitting on the couch doing nothing. And so if you find a person that you love doing nothing with, like that is your person.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the Instagram pictures. It's just such a tiny sliver of life. It's what we see. And so then like you're addicted to social media and you're like, why am I not doing that? Why am I not doing that? That's not real life. That's someone else's like fake highlight reel that's highly edited and it's total nonsense. And my wife and I both had like a real clarity around that. And honestly, we're both pretty boring, man. Like I love my routines. She loves her routines. Like we are just really well suited for this like suburban, having kids, like living our boring life, doing fun things every now and then. But we love, like, there are a lot of people who say like they go on vacation and then they're like, back to reality. For me, I'm like, fucking reality's great. Like I love waking up early in the morning, like working in the morning, then playing with my son. Then like after this, I get to go back, make it home by like 4 to go hang out with him at the playground. Like that's the best. Like that's the best life I can imagine living. I don't need to be on the beach in the Bahamas to do that. Like it's better here actually. Like my routines are what I love. And the vacation isn't an escape from the reality. It might be a different reality. And so like we have always thought about that. It was like, these different seasons of life, it's like sit in that season and embrace it for what it is. And don't fear it. Don't bemoan what the last season was like. Don't stress over what the next season's going to be like. Just sit with this one and make it wonderful, whatever it is.
Yeah. I really love what you're saying and appreciate what you're saying, because especially on X, and you've probably seen some of this stuff, there's this weird, almost like monk mode, red pill dating culture that's being popularized to young men, where it's basically like, success in relationships are mutually exclusive. So if you want to be successful at a young age, you should not be dating, you should not get married, which is funny because hearing you speak and a lot of the men that we've respected most in this podcast, almost all of them talk about how the woman that they found actually pushed them to a level that they would never be able to achieve on their own.
There is nothing that will ensure your success more than having a supportive and loving partner in your life. Nothing. Having someone that lifts you up, having someone that has faith in you on your bad days, having someone that calls you on your bullshit when you're giving it out, that person is your ultimate success driver. And so like the idea, you can totally be alone and be successful, but you're not going to be very happy when you're successful if you're alone. The whole point of being successful in my mind, and of like achieving financial success or any of these other things, is having people you love to enjoy it with. Like what good is having a whole bunch of money or a yacht or a jet or a nice house if you don't have great friends and loving family to enjoy it with?
Totally.
Like when you close your eyes and imagine you're dead and you're at your funeral, who is sitting in the front row at your funeral? Who is sitting there? Like truly imagine it. Those are the people that matter in your life. And yet we go day after day without prioritizing those people. We let those relationships atrophy. That's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
Is the people that are going to be sitting there. And you can create that. You can create that reality by how you actually treat people, how you interact with them, how you love them on a daily basis. That's what matters.
Mm-hmm. It seems like you had that maybe like come to Jesus moment around life, just like almost like a spiritual awakening where it's like, what am I going to be like when I'm 40 or 50? If I continue on this linear path in corporate America. And I'm curious, it seems like it's such a hard decision when you're in the seat, sitting at the desk to make that decision of like going off and doing something on your own. What sort of advice would you give people who are kind of going through it right now and trying to figure out what the next steps could be to really find that freedom and afford themselves that opportunity of like really, embracing this newfound spirit that they might be able to create for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, you need to decide what you want out of life. And most of us default into what we think we want on the basis of what other people want. And that other people is either your family, or it's society, or it's your culture that you're in, or it's your friends. Like, that is how we are assuming what we want. It's, oh, well, this is what success looks like because that's what Twitter says, or that's what Instagram says. And you're just accepting that as reality. It's your default setting. And usually that's around money and financial success. Usually it's like, well, I want to be successful. You're like, well, why? What does success look like to you? What does winning look like to you? Is it literally just like being by yourself with a whole bunch of money? Because I know a whole lot of very rich men who have no relationship with their children, and who have 3 divorces, and who can't get any friends to come hang out with them. Super rich, like $10 billion, right? The most money you could possibly imagine. They can buy tons of people to come hang out with them, but those people don't care about them. Do you want that? And if the answer is yes, by the way, that's fine. Like, if you just want to amass the biggest number and that's your definition of winning the game, I don't care. Like, if that's what's going to make you happy, great, pursue that. I think for most people, that's not.
Totally.
I think for most people, what they want is to feel like they're getting better, feel like they're growing, feel like they're getting better at the game, whatever that game is, and to do that alongside people they love. And that means having a life of more balance. That means that, like, you have to be on a daily basis taking actions that are prioritizing these other things in your world. I saw someone say recently, like, it's actually very easy to make money, but it's very hard to make money and not allow it to ruin your life. And that's such a funny thing, right? Like, everyone, there's this whole, the whole thing of like, can money buy happiness? It's the, all of this stuff. Obviously, up to a certain level, money reduces so much stress. And that level is probably higher than all of the like papers and the numbers that have gotten thrown out over time. But beyond that, money actually creates a lot of problems for people. The whole more money, more problems thing is actually quite real. And you could see that. Like, you go look at the Forbes 100 list, 70% of those people have been divorced.
Yeah.
I don't know what number of them have bad relationships with their children. I would guess a lot. I mean, you go look at like history's most successful men, terribly broken relationships with their dads. Many of them.
Yeah.
And like, if that is a prerequisite to my son being successful, that he has to have a broken relationship with me, count me out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want him to be successful then. He can be like, live a normal average life, and we're going to have an amazing relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, Elon Musk, like Steve Jobs, John Rockefeller, like broken relationships with their dads. I don't know what their relationships are like with their kids, but like broken relationships with their dads. And there's something about that, right? Like, there's just something that we need to learn from the past, because history just repeats itself. It's just the way that it works.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk about this concept of chasing the mountain. It does remind me of the podcast we did with Jason Karp a few months ago, where he was talking about, he was at Penn. He was a fairly average student, kind of squeaked in, has an econ class, finds out he gets a 95 on the test, which is the highest out of anyone in the class. That was like his proof of concept moment of, okay, I'm actually a lot smarter than I think. I have a lot more potential. Let me lean into this a little bit and see what I can do. And he goes on this like 15-year conquest, just basically crushing everything. I think he called it demon mode, how Jason has like a demon mode. But it was interesting because he's basically saying this is a cautionary tale, because that's what led him to developing degenerative eye disease, autoimmune, which he then corrected. But it was also kind of weirdly motivating in a way, just because I feel like so many men, even myself included, I feel like I'm not achieving my potential. There's almost like this dark horse that you could channel to be successful. So I don't know, you just made me think about that. And I'm just wondering, is there a way to use some of those characteristics that you're talking about in a driving, successful way, but not let it overcome you to that point?
Yeah, I think that getting better every day is really important. And that is what drives me today, right? Like, I'm very fortunate to have had a level of success to date where I don't really need to worry all that much about things that I would have worried about 5 years ago. And I'm working harder than I've ever worked. I'm working with higher leverage than I've ever worked too. So the hard doesn't necessarily look the same as it did when I was working my 100-hour weeks in finance. But I'm highly motivated on a number of, I mean, there's no reason I would wake up at 4 a.m. and get into a cold plunge if I wasn't really excited about the things that I'm doing on a daily basis. But to me, that's all driven around feeling like I'm getting slightly better at whatever it is that I'm working on every day. Just a little bit. Like I don't feel the need to like conquer the world on any given day, but to get a little bit better at those things. And when you align yourself around that, like that is the driving motive. I don't know if it's going to be financially. I don't know if it's going to be relationships. I don't know if it's going to be whatever the thing is. But if I'm taking tiny daily actions on all of these things that I know contribute positively to the future, then I can trust where I'm going to end up in 5, 10 years. Like, I don't know exactly where it's going to be, but I know that if I do these things on a daily basis, it's probably not going to go bad. There might be like bad luck along the way. There might be swings we talk about. Like, I know I'm going to get back up.
Yeah.
And I know I'm the type of person that when I get punched in the face, I can get back up.
Yeah.
And if you have that mentality around the things that you do, it's very hard to beat that person. Like you never bet against the person who just keeps getting back up. You just never bet against that person.
100%. You mentioned earlier that you wouldn't need to read Atomic Habits because you dominate habit formation. But is there an area where you feel like you need to continue to evolve to get to where you want to be, whether it's family, business, etc.?
Yeah, plenty of areas. I naturally have low empathy. I think I need to work on that constantly. That's mainly for relationships with friends, with family. Because I'm wired the way I'm wired, which is I don't talk about it. I mean, I'm a maniac. Like I am full on nuts about stuff. When I decide I'm going to do something, I do it. And there's a lot of stuff that then kind of like falls away when I'm focusing on the one thing. And so if that's, hey, I'm going to follow this diet, then like people are going to be annoyed around me when I'm like not eating the tiny little thing or taking the sip of the drink or whatever the thing is while I'm focused on that goal. And if it's a working out goal, then I'm like, I'm going to be maniacally focused on that thing. If it's a work thing, like, hey, I want to go raise this venture fund or I want to write this book, I'm going to be maniacally focused on it. And I don't need a whole lot else when I'm doing that. Like, I don't need some external motivation. I don't need someone to pay me money for it. Like, that's just how I'm wired. I've always been that way. I've always had an ability to focus on the one thing and like everything else kind of goes away and I'm like fully in on that. And I am terrible at empathizing with the fact that very few people are wired that way and they need support along the way, and they might need changes in how they feel and adjustments on how they're, what they're doing on a daily basis as a result. And that applies to my wife, that applies to relationships with my parents, relationships with some of my closest friends. Like that is a real challenge when you are just wired very differently than the people that you love and that you're around. And you need to learn to like soften in certain ways. You can also pull them up in certain ways where you're trying to teach them some of the things that you think are good. But I wouldn't wish the way that I'm wired on everybody. I actually don't think it's healthy in a lot of cases to be that way. I think balance is good. So that's like broadly something that I think I constantly need to work on.
But the interesting thing too to what you're saying is a lot of friends actually appreciate the non-empathetic friend that gives you the exact advice that you need to hear that you might not want to hear in that moment. Like I remember for me in 2017, I just graduated from college, pissed away my baseball career, was drinking all the time. And I have those type of white man genetics where I just hold fat in my face when I put on weight. So like I looked at a picture of myself on July 4th. My one buddy goes, dude, you look like absolute shit. You needed to get it together. And that's literally what started me running and marathon training and Ironmans and all that kind of stuff. So it just took that one piece of feedback. So I'm not trying to encourage your behavior.
Fat shaming works, man.
Yeah.
Fat shaming works with guys. I saw one of my friends, Dan Go, tweeted that recently. Like, hot take that fat shaming works with a lot of men. I have like one of my dearest, closest friends in the world. Like, the guy that I would probably be, one of a few people I might call if I was ever stuck in a third world prison and needed someone to break me out, like that type of friend. This guy, Chad Rogers, professional baseball player. Now he's a trainer, writes all my workout programs. He maybe like, this is 2014. I went down and visited him before I started working my first job. And he was a trainer and he was a personal trainer. And we took a picture together after we had just done this like paddleboard thing in Florida. And we looked at the picture and I was like, dude, you look fat.
Yeah.
Like you look fat. And he was like one of my dearest friends in the world. This wasn't a random guy. And I was like, you're a personal trainer and you look fat. Like, how can other people, like, they're not going to take you seriously.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to build this business, like you gotta lock your stuff in. Like, I know you're just like randomly ordering pizza at night. Like, you're just living an unhealthy lifestyle that's not aligned with what you're trying to put out into the world and the ripples that you're trying to create with these clients and with the people. And he was pissed at me in the moment. Like, I was staying with him and he like, I honestly thought he might have like kicked me out.
Yeah.
And then he locked in his life and the dude is insanely fit, has become like a better than scratch golfer. He like wins amateur tournaments. I mean, he's incredible and has built like a crazy good business down there. And he still laughs and talks about how it was one of those examples of everything good in life hurts short term and then feels great long term.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for conversations, right? Like hard conversations suck in the short term, but they're so good in the long term because of the change that they create. And that became, for me at least, like one of my broader mental models for life is just everything that you want to achieve in life is on the other side of something hard.
Mm-hmm.
But you get to choose your hard along the way. And it's really hard to find your purpose and get to work on your purpose. It's also really hard to live a purpose-free life. So you get to choose your hard. It's really hard to build deep relationships. It's also really hard to live on the surface with everyone around you. So you get to choose your hard. It's really hard to build your body and build the body that you want. It's also really hard to see your body fail and be in chronic pain.
Yeah.
So again, you get to choose your hard. So everything in life is that. Everything in life is choosing your hard that you're going to have in the moment now that is going to feel great later.
Do you find like hard conversations are similar to cold plunging where it never gets easier, you just get a better tolerance to it? Or are there things that you can do to actually get better at those difficult conversations?
I think you can get better at difficult conversations. And I think it is making sure that the person knows that you are coming from a place of love. And that's everything. If the person knows that you're coming from a place of love, that you're approaching them with love, and that you're saying those things because you care about them and because you love them, it's not an attack, that completely changes it in their mind. It still hurts. They're still not going to like what you say. It's still going to be feedback that they don't want to hear. It's still the tough pill to swallow, all of those things. It's not going to be fun. But at the end of the day, if they know that you're grounded in a place of love, that's how you come around, because you know that the person is approaching you with something that is real. It's not an attack. It's not, it's not the friend that's trying to tear you down, which we all have, by the way. There's the people in your life that would say that to you because they're trying to make themselves feel better about where they are. They're like, hey man, you look like shit, because they look like shit and they want to feel better about how they look. But if you know that it's not that, if you know that it's the person that is approaching from a place of love, like, hey, Chad, Brett, like whoever it is, I love you and I would do anything for you, but you got to get your life in order. You got to turn around everything that you're doing. I mean, I had a dear friend recently that I had that conversation with. I was like, man, we're going to our 10-year college reunion soon and you look terrible. Like, just for the next 60 days, text me every single day and tell me that you got your workout in. I don't care what it is. Go for a walk, like do whatever. And tell me that you ate, had your protein shake every day. And I guarantee you'll look like a different freaking person when you show up to that thing in 60 days. If you do that. And he did. And he knew, because when I said it, that I was committed to it. I was like, text me every single day. I wasn't saying just go, dude, fix your life, go do this thing. I was like, I'm in it with you. I'll sit in the mud with you on this journey, on what it is. And I want to be there for you. I want to see you turn around and improve it. And so when they know that, then it becomes much easier.
When I hear you say that, I only hear high empathy. Like, I feel like we kind of bastardized this idea of someone who, you seem very logical. It's like your logic doesn't allow you to contradict yourself. So when you see other people saying they want to do something and they're contradicting themselves, you're like, I can't just sit here and like let you get away with that.
I would say that like, I mean, I'm getting better at it for sure. So I appreciate that. But I guess what I would say is I have low empathy for people that aren't in my like direct circle of loved ones. And I need to work on that. Like, my natural reaction is like, if you don't like where you are in life, like, get better, like fix it. Like the first thing I say when like I had a young guy reach out to me recently, 24 years old, and he's not happy with where he is in life. And he asked for my advice. And I sent him I normally try to just like send a video back because it's easier. Like I'm on a walk, I'll just send a video talking through it. And the first thing I said is wake up early and work out for like 2 straight weeks. I don't know, it could be a week. Wake up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym. And his response was like, dude, I'm trying to make more money. Like that has nothing to do with success. And I was like, yeah, it does. I don't know how to explain this to you, but a big reason that you're not happy with where you are in life is because you're identifying as a loser. You're identifying as someone that doesn't do the things that they say they're going to do. You don't achieve the things you think you should be achieving. You don't have whatever more that you think you deserve. And when you wake up early and work out, you immediately shift that identity because all of a sudden you're doing a really hard thing day in, day out. And you're putting a checkbox next to, like you're checking off that you're doing that hard thing on a daily basis. And if it's just one little thing, like each time you do that, it's a little reminder that you're actually a winner, that you're like changing that psychology. And people say it's like, oh, that's woo-woo, like that's not going to change how you, it does. It 100% does. I have never met a loser who wakes up at 5 a.m. and works out. I will say that over and over again until people believe me. It's very, very true.
Yeah.
You said that at HPLT. It was probably one of the most impactful things that you said. And also I know you work out at home, but if you're someone that goes to the gym, you're only going to be surrounded by winners at that hour too. Like this serendipitous networking or the people you meet, they could change your life just by going at that 1 hour, that one decision.
Yeah. I met Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, who became one of my closest mentors and a huge, huge impact on my life because I was showing up at the gym for 6 straight months at 4:45. He was one of 5 other people that was there. He was worth $1 billion and he was showing up at the gym at 4:45 in the morning, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. Like, he's 60 years old. Like he has no reason to do that at that point in his career or life. To your point on like, you've made it, you're good, chill. No, because that's actually what got him there. Like that mentality is what had allowed him to succeed on that level. But to your point, you show up at the gym at that time of the morning, like there's no losers there. It's all people that are working hard on whatever it is they're working on. Yeah. No one is waking up at 5 a.m. to Netflix and chill. No one does that. Like no one's watching Netflix at 5 in the morning unless it's because they stayed up overnight at 5 in the morning because it's freaking hard to wake up early. And so you're just not. You get up and you're motivated to go do whatever the thing is. If that's taking care of your kids, great. If that's working hard on some project, great. If that's working out, great. Whatever it is, you're doing something hard that is really, really important for your life.
Definitely. How many times did you see him at the gym before you decided to reach out to him?
I had basically talked to him every single day for 6 months before I knew who he was. I wasn't in tech and I wasn't like in the mix. Like I didn't like follow, tech news, whatever. And honestly, like he wore glasses, like it didn't look like the person that you see on stage at the keynotes. And so he was one of 5 guys that was there every single morning that I talked to, that we got to know, like just walking around the gym, talking shop on whatever. And then someone said to me, do you know who that is that you were just talking to? It's the CEO of Apple, Tim Cook. And I was like, damn, like I've probably been saying the dumbest things to this guy. And I was early in my career. And so I was trying to learn. I was trying to soak things up. And so I just approached him whether he'd be willing to get coffee and chat. And I think he knew, when you're in that position in life, when you've achieved this like extraordinary, 0.0001% level of success, it's really hard to find people that aren't looking for some transaction with you. Basically, anyone that approaches you, you have to assume that they're looking for something. They want you to invest in their company. They want you to give them a job. They want you to whatever, like the thing. And I actually didn't want any of that. I just wanted to learn. I wasn't looking for a job. I had a great job. I wasn't looking for an investment. I wasn't doing a startup. Like there was nothing. I didn't need Apple. Like actually, honestly, to date, like I've known him for 10 years. I don't know that I've ever asked him more than like one thing about Apple over the course of 10 years because I don't care. Like I have an iPhone. He didn't get it for me. Like it's like, it doesn't matter to me. I love learning from someone like that about like the principles and the things and the values and the people that he has access to that he learns from, like the extension of that. I feel like I can really embrace and learn from. And that's what I cared about. It was like learning about him as an individual, as a person. And that goes a lot longer, right? Like that's a genuine relationship then. That's not a transaction.
Yeah. And that's a blessing in disguise for you too, because you had a 6-month body of work of him seeing you showing up at the gym early. So when you
Exactly.
finally ask for something, you're like,
Exactly.
I know this is a guy.
Yeah. And there were people, that gym made the very unfortunate decision to use in their marketing that he worked out at that time in the morning. And he found out and then stopped going to that gym, unfortunately. And that's like, you shouldn't do that. It's just bad. It's a bad move. Bad business move. Also just a bad, like, personal thing to do. But on the later end of that, a lot of people would like literally show up and just like go straight up to him and be like, with the ask, whatever the thing was, hey, I have some startup, like would love for you to take a look at it. And it's just so funny to me because if that's the way you play the game, like I'm just going to cross you out. Like you're never competing with me. Like you're never going to make it at whatever it is you're doing. If that's the way that you play it, that you're like, go straight into the ask, right? Like that's short games only. And no one has ever won life in anything, in relationships and work, in parenting, like by playing short games.
That's like proposing to a girl on the first date.
It's absurd to think that it would work, right? But a lot of people do that. It's like you realize that is how a lot of people operate, that they think that is the way to do things.
Was there anything that surprised you about someone like Tim Cook, someone who's operating at that level of success that you would have probably have expected?
I mean, the number one thing is just like the discipline to show up at the gym every single day at that time. I still marvel at that. And whenever people ask me, I say like, that's all you really need to know about the type of person that he is that he still does that. He still works harder than any other person at that entire company. It's one of the biggest companies in the world. I would be willing to bet significant money that no one at that company has worked harder than him over the last year. He's the CEO.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to do that. Like he'll still have a job. He'll still make his 100 mil a year, whatever he's making, like astronomical success. Everyone will love him. Things are good. The company will do great. But that's how he operates. That's who he is as a human being and as a person. And that to me is just an inspiration.
Yeah.
He found his calling. I mean, he found the thing that he wanted to create in the world and the ripples that he wanted to create. And so I genuinely don't think it feels like work to him.
For you, the Tim Cook story reminded me of this. When it comes to relationship building, getting podcast guests, building relationships with someone kind of punching above your weight, what strategies have been most effective for you in terms of like getting on their radar, doing it in a very thoughtful, effective way?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is like creating value for other people around you in weird ways. And that can come in a million different ways, right? Like everyone's like, well, how do I create value? I'm like, I don't know. I can't give you the answer for how to create value for that person, but it can be as simple as, you've done the work and you know about their business and you have some idea for them, or you saw an article that they might find interesting, or you listened to a podcast that made you think about some opportunity or some idea that they haven't identified yet. Or you can connect them with someone because you know that they're looking for that one thing and you know the person that they actually might need to connect with. Whatever that thing is, go and create that value for the person. And don't do it with the expectation of there being a quid pro quo. Just do it. The people I know that do that consistently have had the best outcomes in life.
Wow.
And Brian Mazza is one of those people, by the way. Like Brian, I only met Brian this year. He lives in my town. He's my neighbor. Which is hilarious. It's like two random guys that live near each other that are both into the same stuff. Super lucky. And he does that. Like he's connected me. I mean, Jason's an example, like brings people together like that. It's not like Brian's saying like, hey, if you do something with him, I need 10%, whatever. He doesn't do that. That's not how he operates. But as a result of the way that he operates, he's creating this very cool ecosystem around him, and he gets to spend time and have a blast and have fun and have great financial outcomes as a result in the long term. So if you're young and you're trying to do that, to me, it all comes down to people and how are you like creating this ecosystem around you of people that you've created value for that want to have you around as a result.
So creating value with no expectation.
Yeah. I mean, the best things in life come when you do that. It's like the golden rule.
Is there anyone that you think of off the top of your head who you kind of like cast forward your next 5 to 10 years? You're like, I kind of want to be like that when I'm 45.
No, I don't think, I don't think it's really possible to map your reality onto someone else's. Certainly there are people who have aspects of what they've done that I would love to emulate. You know, like from a writing I'm writing a book. Like I would love to learn from someone like James Clear with Atomic Habits and how he put out something that has impacted so many people, or Tim Ferriss impacted so many people. But I know nothing about, who they are as husbands or fathers or friends or, workout savages, or like I don't know any of those other things about these people. And so there are aspects of these different people that I would really love to emulate. But really what I want to do is carve my own path. I want to make my own trail in whatever it is I'm doing. And I want being a father to be the most important part of that entire journey. I don't care enough about money. Like I'm not trying to be a billionaire. If it happens by accident, I don't know, maybe there's a path that I could if you told me to close my eyes and imagine a world where I'm 60 and I'm a billionaire, I could probably tell you roughly how that might happen, but it's not going to be the goal. The goal is I want to have an amazing relationship with my son who's here now, and then any future children that we end up having. And I want to be able to coach their little league teams, and I want to be able to go to all their dance recitals. And I want to be able to do all of those things. And that is the most important thing in the world to me, because if there's one thing I've realized, it's that there is nothing in the world like seeing your child smile. I have had every opportunity and feeling of success that you can have out there. I've made money. I've had athletic success. I've had relationship success. I've had all these other things. There is nothing in the world like the happiness that you feel when you see your kid smile. And that is what I want to be around. That feeling to me in the morning when I play with him, or when I go home now and I get to go on the playground with him, there's nothing in the world like that. And it is short. It's not going to be here. I don't play at the playground with my dad anymore. He probably still feels the same way when he sees me smile doing things I'm doing, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
You get that 10-year window, that 15-year window at them, and then it's over. And so I don't want to lose that time because I'm chasing some other more, whatever that is. I want to be there for that.
Well, that mindset, it seems like that also extends to your parents as well. Because the way that I understand it, didn't someone sit you down and basically was like, Sahil, how old's your dad? You were like 60. It's like, well, if he lives to 75, 80, and you see your dad once a year, you have like 15 to 20 visits left. And then you moved across the country right after that, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, that was the big come to Jesus moment. It was the first time that I had ever encountered the idea of mortality with a loved one that close to us. And we've been very fortunate to not have to encounter it in a more visceral way. But those little realizations that time is not infinite. Like when you are a kid and when you're growing up, you have this idea that time is infinite because it feels like it is. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that when I'm 40 and then I'm going to do this. And you don't think about it. You're like, you see old people and you're like, oh, that person's old. But you're never going to be that old person. Yeah. Like you see your grandparents, you're like, oh, that's sad that they're old and that they're dying, but you're never going to be them because I'm young, I'm healthy, things are good. And when you have to face it with a parent or with a loved one or someone else in your life, I've had teammates from my Stanford days that have died. It is terrifying the first time you encounter it. And it really makes you, again, reshuffle like what actually matters in the end. And you realize that it's generally not the things that you thought mattered. And so prioritizing and building your life around those things within the confines of by the way, responsibilities that do exist. Like I need to pay the bills. I need to take care of my loved one. I need to take care of my family. I need to make sure I provide. Those are things that are important to me, values that I hold really close. I want to be able to spend time with those people. And so we moved. Yeah. I mean, we moved. I was seeing my parents once a year, moved. Now I see them every other week.
Yeah.
And, my number of times that I was going to see my parents before they died mathematically went from 15 to hundreds, just with one change that I made in my life. And what better change, right? I literally created time. I was poof, created time that I had with my parents. And I can't imagine a better decision you could make than doing something. I don't think you ever regret that. I think the reality is that it was risky. But the greatest risk you can take is taking no risk. And regret generally comes from inaction rather than action. You very rarely regret things you did. You usually regret things you didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my bias, is like, do the thing. And if it sucks and you like move across the country and it's awful and your job is terrible, you can reverse it. We always assume that decisions are irreversible. Oh, I can't do that. I can't leave my job at Deloitte because they'll never take me back. Deloitte will take you back, dude. Like, they are looking for, I don't know. It's not like they have the highest hiring standards in the world. Like, they will take you back. You go do something interesting for 2 years and it doesn't work out, you can go get hired at some consulting firm. I promise. I promise. Like, no one, I really don't think that anyone is ever going to leave like McKinsey, go start a company for 2 years, it fails, and not be able to get another job at McKinsey. You're super smart. Like, you got your job at Deloitte, you got your job at PwC, all these places, you'll be able to get that job again. It's not just poof, gone all of a sudden. And so I generally think that people punt on taking these risks, and they say like, oh, maybe later, it'll be a better time. There's no such thing as the better time. It's never going to be a better time.
Yeah. I found that I feel like at the other side of all big ass decisions, everything is in your control, or most things are in your control afterwards for it to be a positive decision or a negative decision. A lot of times when you're on the other side of that, making that choice, you're just sitting there thinking about the negatives, but everything that you do afterwards is you proving yourself right.
Yeah. I mean, we do, like, with all things that we're afraid of, you take the negative. So you say, oh, this big decision that I'm really scared of. Well, what if it goes wrong? Well, what if no one buys my product? Well, what if I don't hit my financial goals? Well, what if I'm not able to pay the bills? And you never do the inverse. You never say like, what if I exceed my goals? What if this becomes enormous? What if we have to up-level our entire life because this works on such a dramatic scale? Like, you don't actually play devil's advocate to your own negativity when you have some fear, because the fear is what it becomes emotional. You start going down the emotional path. It's sort of like a take on Solomon's paradox, which is like King Solomon in the Bible was known for being very wise and giving out his wisdom and then not taking his own advice. Like, he was, had hundreds of affairs and, terrible relationships with all of his children, and like all of the wise advice he was giving out to others, he was not taking himself. And so it's this idea, Solomon's paradox, that we're very good at giving advice to other people and very bad at taking our own advice. And it's because you're rational with other people and emotional with yourself. When you're making that decision, you're extremely emotional. It's really hard for you to do because you're scared, because you're insecure, all of the different things. So being able to separate yourself from that and view things objectively and think just in logical terms, like write it down onto a piece of paper, step away from it, come back to it, do these things that force you to be logical, makes a huge difference.
I actually, it's funny, I actually quit a consulting job to do Mafia. And I was doing the exact things that you were doing, playing worst case devil's advocate with myself. And then I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, well, whether it was baseball, whether it was your job, every time you've ever watered the grass where it needs to be watered, you've been successful. So why would it not be the same thing for something that you're super passionate about? Wouldn't it be even greater than what you're imagining, or have more success in anything else that you've ever done? And I just leaned into that feeling. It didn't overcomplicate it. I'm like, okay, if things don't work out with Austin, I can always go back to Jersey or New York and get another consulting job with some pretty cool experience on the resume. But but even your concept too of like, I keep thinking about this concept of you literally bought time with your parents and gave your parents the greatest gift and your son the greatest gift of giving them a consistent relationship. And I wonder how much more empowered people would feel if they realized that they actually hold the keys to the kingdom to make that one big decision that changes their life.
Yeah, you're always more powerful than you think. And your example is a perfect one. Like, play the positive devil's advocate on your fears. Turn them around and say, wait, actually, I've pretty much done everything that I said I was going to do. Like, when I got excited about something, when I set out to do something, I achieve it. And again, that's why I tell people to wake up early and work out, because you create that evidence in your own mind. Manifestation, the whole idea of like manifesting things to be real in the world, is all about just stacking evidence in favor of the person that you want to become. And having all of that evidence built up in your mind that you, when you set out to do something, are the type of person that actually goes out and does it. That allows you to manifest anything, because then you say like, oh yeah, like I want to do this, and you're thinking about it. Well, I have a whole ton of evidence that proves that I can do that.
Yeah.
whether it was waking up early and working out, or whether it was cold plunging, or whether it was goals that I've achieved in the past, all of that, I can go back in my brain and say, yeah, I probably will go do that. I have a whole ton of confirmatory evidence in my mind and in my past that tells me that I will go do that.
Yeah.
And so then you like manifest it, not really manifesting it. It's just results. It's just data. It's evidence that you literally have created in your world. And so manufacturing that evidence along the way, manufacturing that data is a great way to like hack the system, if you will.
It's like Goggins' cookie jar example.
What is that?
He just like, I think he writes down things that he's done in the past to remind himself of just validation that he can do certain things.
Yeah.
That's cool. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Like the 200-mile race, the 100-mile race where he shit himself or whatever. It's like his cookie jar. It's almost like with your marathon, your wife had a cookie jar of you because she's seen this amazing body of work over the last 15 years that you've been together.
Yeah.
And it was almost like she needed you to believe in yourself, like your own cookie jar, because she was seeing it from a side.
Yeah. And most people, I mean, when the other like real key to all of this is like bad times happen, right? We're talking about a lot of positive things and motivation, and that's great. The reality is there is darkness in life. Like you lose someone, you get fired, you get injured. Like there's real darkness that happens in life. And one idea that has always resonated with me is from, again, the ancient poet Rumi, who says, "The wound is where the light enters you." And I think about that all the time in the context of these periods of darkness, that you just need to sit with it. There's this like feeling that you need to do all of these things and create all this movement and rush and get through it. And sometimes just sitting and embracing that period of darkness is what you need, because the wound that you have is where the light is actually entering you. In Indian tradition, there's this idea of the wheel of time, that time goes through this natural cycle of creation, destruction, and then rebirth. Those periods of creation are beautiful. We love them. That's when we're growing. That's when everything's going well. The periods of destruction are that pain. Like that is the sorrow, the person you lost, the job you lost, the failure, whatever it is. But during that period of destruction, the seeds of the light of rebirth are actually being sown. They're being planted. You just can't see them. But having faith and knowing that that is happening within you, that the light is entering you through that wound, gets you through those periods. And if you can keep that faith during those periods of darkness and realize that like your track record for making it through your hardest days is 100%. You've always made it through your hardest days in life to get to where you are today. Every single hard day you've made it through. If you can remember that and have faith in that, it's an incredible thing on the other side.
That's one of the reasons why I think the power of prayer is like such a immensely underutilized tool for a lot of people. A lot of people kind of shove religion, at least in the West, to the side, but prayer in itself is kind of acting from a place of sober-mindedness, where if you're doing it correctly, you're not really participating in a lot of things that you can cope with, whether it's like drinking, sex, drugs, all the different things that can be a cope, and you're literally just asking for, what you want. I think that like realness and really communicating with a higher power is immensely powerful when it comes to creating some of that change.
Yeah, I mean, all of those things you mentioned, drugs, alcohol, social media, porn, I mean, all of that stuff is masking whatever pain you're feeling, whatever anxiety, depression, sadness, sorrow, whatever the thing is. You're finding something that masks the other thing and learning to sit with it. I'm not saying that you need to just abstain from all of those things 100%. You should live your life as you wish. But learning to actually embrace and sit with that pain is a healthy thing as well. And so if that comes through prayer, if that comes through meditation, if it just comes from going for a walk and just feeling that, it's a great, great thing that you can learn to embrace. I mean, insecurity is the one that I would say like I wrestled with for most of my life. And the realization I had is now seeing it on the other side, where I feel very secure. I'm really happy with my life. I don't feel the need to puff myself up. I can tell you exactly how things are in my life, what I'm trying to get better at, where I suck, all of those things. Is just that insecurity is loud and confidence is quiet. The loudest person in the room is the weakest person in the room. Denzel Washington said that in American Gangster. I've never forgotten it. Amazing movie if you haven't
It's a
seen it.
great
It's so
movie.
good. He said, "You're too loud." He's like, "You're too loud. The loudest person in the room is the weakest one in the room." And it really stuck with me because I always thought like loud means you're successful. Like you tell people how you're doing, all the things, you're flexing on all this different stuff. And when you actually go and stand in these rooms with truly incredibly successful people, they are very rarely the loud one. People are coming to them and trying to tell them about all the things they're doing. And they're just kind of sitting there. Like when you watch someone enter a room that is going to be the most powerful person in the room, the whole gravity of the room changes.
Mm.
Like, observing it from the side, it's crazy. They walk into the room and everyone starts like kind of turning and positioning their body towards them, like shifting slightly towards that person. There's like an actual physical gravity that pulls people towards them. But it's not because they're loud. It's not because they're taught they come in and they're like puffing up their chest and saying things, because everyone knows they're legit. They don't
Yeah.
need to tell you that they're legit because people know it. And so like when someone is loudly telling you how much they're crushing it, they are very rarely actually crushing it. I can guarantee that.
100%.
It's like Logan Roy from Succession. Did you ever watch Succession?
Yeah, I love Succession.
Like that was exactly him, like this kind of quiet Scottishman. Like everyone would kind of posture themselves around him whenever he would enter a room.
I saw it for the first time at the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger event in Omaha this past year, and we were in this room that was like a small gathering of very successful people, a room that I had no business being in, that I felt fortunate to be there in. And there were a couple times when someone came into the room that was just on another level, and you can just see literally the whole room, the gravity of an entire room changes and starts like pulling. If you're just standing there watching it, it's like a crazy social phenomenon. I'd never experienced it before, but you can see it, and it's like it's super interesting to see and watch. Actually,
one of the things I wanted to circle back to and just say is I really appreciate you and Brian Mazza. It just seems like you guys have a true appreciation for fatherhood. And one of the things I notice just observing like society as a whole is like fatherlessness seems like the core of a lot of problems. And I'm not sure if you're doing this intentionally or not, but just being a good example is such a rare thing. So I just want to say that like this, you wanting to be a good father, I think it's such a powerful example for a lot of people that is just so overlooked. Like everyone just says like chase the bag or go after girls, but like actually being a good father is a totally different thing.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I've learned a lot from Brian, and observing the way that he is with his boys, and just how much pride and how much fun that he has in it. And there's the social media side, which is the stuff that you see, and then there's the stuff you don't see, where like he's going out early in the morning when his son wants to play soccer. He's writing them a little note when he goes on a trip about like what he's going to do. There's like the tiny things that I've just observed as a friend, seeing him do, that I admire so much and that I want to emulate, things that I learn and that I pick up. I was very fortunate to have an absolutely incredible father. My dad, I think in general, we either amplify the things that we loved in our relationship with our father, or we reject wholesale the way that our father was with us. In my dad's case, it was the latter. His father was not accepting of him wanting to marry my mom. So my dad's white, my mom is Indian. When my dad wanted to marry my mom, his dad told him, you have to choose between her or us. My dad walked out the door and never saw him again his entire life. I've never met my dad's father. I've never met my dad's mother. Like a full estrangement of the entire family. And to me, that was an incredible lesson on love, on conviction, on just trusting yourself. And as a result, I think my dad's bias with me was he was going to be the most supportive, loving father that he could possibly be, because he didn't feel like he had that in his own life. And so I grew up, and still to this day just have an incredible relationship with my dad and an incredible respect for just the type of man he is. And if I could be half of the type of man that he is in the end, I would feel like that was a life well lived. And my goal with a lot of the things I do today with my content, I'm not monetizing my content. I don't do brand deals really. I'm not like doing sponsor this, sponsor that. My platform is largely me just giving things away for free. And a big focus of it, and what I've realized, a big part of my mission and of the vision and of my purpose, is to inspire other men and women to embrace being parents and to know that you can live an amazing life. You can make money, you can be healthy, and be incredible parents all at once. You don't actually have to pick. Like the whole idea of like 4 burners and you have to choose which ones are on and which ones are off. It's bullshit. Like, you can live an incredible life and you can have it all. Everyone says like you can have it all, but not at the same time. It's just not true. It's like, yeah, if you believe that in your own head, then you probably can't if you believe those like self-limiting beliefs that you create, because it's the illusory truth effect. Like the more you hear something, the more you believe it, whether or not it's true or false. And so we've heard that over and over again. You have to focus on one thing before you can get to the next one. And scrubbing that out of your life and realizing that if you focus on the highest leverage thing within these different areas, that you can have it all and all at once. That change in mindset is what I want to inspire people around.
It's almost impossible to fail when you have the positive influence that your dad had in that story. It's so powerful. Has your mom forgiven you for not getting a PhD?
Yeah. That's an ongoing joke in our family. The no medical school was a big ding, and then no PhD. Neither my sister nor I, by the way. So we both failed in that regard. No, my mom is unbelievably supportive and very proud. But it is just like a funny thing with Indian moms that there's like it's a very achievement oriented culture. And the idea of achievement in Indian culture is oftentimes they'll like name, it's like McKinsey or it's medical school or it's the PhD or it's maybe entrepreneur. No, it's just a joke.
Well, I'm sure she's very proud of you.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
Yeah. Well, dude, we appreciate you doing this, man. As I said, we don't think that this podcast would sit here without your influence from afar. So we appreciate you. We're pumped to be friends with you. Hopefully we get some good workouts into when we're back in the Northeast. A little cold plunge, but we appreciate you so much, man.
Thank you for having me. And the feeling is mutual. And I'm excited to take a step back a year from now and see where you guys are with everything. And I'm crushing my Noble protein shakes. So I appreciate you guys for that too.
We got a steak hat for you too.
Oh, there we go. We'll make that happen.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.